Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Adrien Lawyer, who is the author of Gender Transition for Dummies. And I wanted to do a short interview with him just to talk about this new project because, frankly, I hadn't heard about it. And I was sad that I hadn't heard about it. I don't get to keep up with everybody in the same ways that I should. But I'm kind of curious. So let me ask first, why this book?
Yeah, we were so lucky. The Wiley Publishing Company reached out to us, and I'm sure that they put several irons in the fire. We don't really know what their process was, but we were the folks who answered and were willing to take on the project. They sold me on it when we met with them. They were saying that this book was needed. They've researched the market. There wasn't anything else that was a guide to transition, and that trans and non-binary folks were out there looking for answers in places where there's not a transgender resource center of New Mexico, like where I work and started back in '07. So here in New Mexico, we have a center with real live people to try to answer your questions as best we can. But in so many places all over the country, there's just so little resource that folks have a lot of questions and not a lot of places to get centralized answers.
I hope they're doing a good outreach to libraries. I remember that being one of the things that happened for me is that it turned out there were so few, especially accessible, reasonable books about cross-dressing. The first book in particular, like I got thank you notes from librarians because they were like, people have always come in wanting this book, and I never had anything to give them except these weird psychological, profiles and things like that. So yeah, I can understand why this book makes sense. So it's it's non-binary transition. Who else do you cover?
Yeah, exactly. It's binary trans folks, non-binary folks. I would think that anybody who was a family partner, loved one of a trans person would be interested in this. And honestly, we've had some just straight cis allies who said, I don't know what it means to transition. I don't know what all the elements of that are or all these details, and I'm curious to take a look at it too, just to
Sure.
be a better friend to trans folks by being more knowledgeable about what they go through. But our target audience was definitely for trans and or non-binary folks who specifically Dummies books are thought of as reference books. Like they're not meant to be read cover to cover. They're the
Right.
type of books where you pick it up and go, okay, I'm curious about how to pick a new name. And then you look for that section, like how to pick a new name, and you go in and read about names and name changes and different ideas and tips and advice about how you could select a name for yourself as an adult, which is not something that a lot of people do. But for trans and non-binary folks, it's not an uncommon thing. So we wanted people to be able to just be wherever they were in their process with whatever questions they had, be able to go to the book and just start to be able to cross-reference and find those answers and be able to then dig deeper.
Cool. I'm gonna see if I can get my university to order one for our collection. If it's not illegal to do that yet. Anyway, oh, these times. It's got to be interesting to be promoting a book like this at this specific moment in time. So, have you had any like pushback, or is it, are you still feeling very supported by the publishers?
Yeah, they are gung ho about this book. Anything we send their way in terms of like promotion, they're following right up on it. I'm definitely going to hit up our publisher about the library outreach and make sure that they're probably already doing that, but I'm going to make sure because you're absolutely right. That would be a group that I think would be really excited to be part of it and to know this book exists, be able to refer people to it. So no, the publisher is rocking it. We're on the internal Wiley bestseller list right now because of the interest in the book, and it's already shipped 1,500 copies. It's been out since March 18th, and I just feel like it's almost like a now more than ever thing.
Yeah.
We got to do this. This is the time for sure.
Well, I do think that there's something to be said for old world media and its place in time. I mean, especially in the midst of book bans, et cetera, et cetera. But even just information that the reality is that we're going to have more and more, I think, young trans people who are barred from accessing anything. Parents know that the internet is where kids get their information, but libraries are still open. So hopefully that will be a good resource.
And our book
Um,
has an ebook version, but mainly Dummies books are printed, so they're in Barnes and Noble and they're in the library and they can, even be photocopied and handed person to person. And I think back to when I started my transition in the early 2000s and how much of everything was word of mouth and us just having to ask each other and try to get these answers person to person. And a book of paper can certainly get in that stream of information for sure.
right. Or even just going, oh, let me copy the pages that you're going to need. So go to the library and just get that thing on name so I can read that over and over again while I figure it out. What's your best tip for people who are trying to figure out a new name? Is there one that came up in the researching the book that you were like, oh, I wish I'd done that because that
Well,
could have been useful.
my name story is very weird. I'm Leslie Adrien Lawyer, and I was born Leslie Adrien Lawyer.
Oh,
So I
yeah,
went to court and changed the spelling of the name Adrian. I had a feminized spelling of Adrian,
right.
and I changed that legally in the court, but that was it. I've always been called Adrian, and I'm
Okay.
still called Adrian. So I have the really most interesting trans name story, I think. But I
Well,
love
two
the
gender neutral names. That's yeah,
exactly
amazing.
at birth. And Leslie, I was named after my first cousin, my mom's sister's child, who is also a trans man who still goes by Les. And I was named after him, and we were both thought to be girls. But then we both turned out to be boys, and we still have that name.
So maybe there's some magic in the less name. I mean, there's Leslie Feinberg, so maybe there's some
You
secret there.
know, our hero for sure. So
Yeah,
I
I
like
know.
to, if your family is in with you and loving you and you have a good relationship with your family, I loved the idea of asking your folks because some people have parents who picked out like a quote unquote boy name and a girl name, and you might love the boy name they picked out for you or the girl name, even though you got the other one. So I loved it if your family's involved to be able to go to them and say, hey, what would you have named me had I been, a different gender? That can be a really cool way to get your new name.
Sure. Yeah, I know Rachel tried that, but they used the girl name on her sister who came next. So they were out of names
Already,
after that. It
already
was like
used it
they had two
all.
names and they had two kids and that yeah. So she didn't get to use that name. But yeah, that's one of the way. I asked my parents what my name would have been if I'd been a boy because I'm the youngest of six and had boy, girl, boy while they were waiting for me. So I always used to joke that my family actually wished me into being a girl. I wasn't supposed to be. But they did have a boy's name ready in case I wrecked the pattern
Right.
because they didn't want it to like everyone to be sad about me being born because I wrecked the pattern. We're a little OCD in my family. Let's just go with that. So anyway, any other like things that you research that are particularly fascinating to you or that like with all the work that you've done, something that sort of surprised you that you learned while writing it?
Totally, totally. You know what I was really interested in the chapter I think I had to do the most research on was the chapter on bottom surgeries, especially phalloplasties. Because for me in my transition, I started my medical stuff in '04 with top surgery. I got on T in like 2005, early '05. I had a total hysto in 2015, but I never wanted to have any genital surgery. So for me, I had, just because I run a trans center and started a trans center, I knew some about that. I thought I knew quite a bit actually. And then I went to research it and was like, whoa, no, there's so many more kinds of flaps to make the phallus. Like I didn't know there were six different places you could harvest that flap from, and having to like figure all that out and then break it down into accessible language was really interesting. Just thinking about all the different ways they're using right now to construct a penis, and it's just going to keep getting better. But right now, there's so much more surgically than there was when I started all that time ago.
Mm. That's cool. I mean, it's always fascinating to think about the fact that all of that research into that surgery, right, as a result of World War I, if I'm not mistaken, right, and the surgeries to correct cis men who'd had their penises blown off. That's basically where that starts. Which fascinating, weird history of why people knew how to do that before trans men could figure out how to access it effectively. So, um, cool. Let me think about something else. Who is so you said this is for mostly people who are going to be transitioning, though a lot of other people as well. Um, what do you expect the impact of the book to be?
Well, I don't, it's hard to say, my hope for it for sure is just that more trans people will feel more empowered. And I think, for me, it's okay to not want different steps that we call part of like gender transition.
Sure.
There's no end point, there's no finish line. You're fully transitioned when you get finished transitioning. And we know that. And we've been talking about this for such a long time. But I fear that even now there are trans folks who feel they have to do something or cross the goal line in some way. Like having surgery on your genitals is when you've done it, and I hope that this book helps people to realize that that's not the case and that your transition is purely your own.
Right.
and that whatever steps you do or don't take to be actualized and healed and to be the person you always knew you should be, then that is your transition, and there doesn't need to be any more to it than that. Including, I think even now folks are surprised to find out that gender dysphoria is not a prerequisite to being trans.
Yeah.
That you can know that your sex and gender are different without hating any part of your body or wanting to change any part of your body. And I think even for me, that was surprising when I found that out because I'm a binary trans person who had horrible dysphoria. So to me, it was like, oh, this is what it's like to be on this path, and to find out that other folks were on the path with me who didn't have that experience was wonderful and also fascinating. It was like how great that some people don't need to have surgery, but also, wow, I didn't know that. So, there must be a lot of folks out there in the cis public who don't know that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's I used to joke that it was only, the arguments in transland were always like, don't ask about surgery. And then the minute we'd walk into a trans conference, it would be the trans people asking each other who had which surgery. And it was like, folks, like you just told everybody not to do this, and you're doing it to each other. Never mind. Um, because it was certainly for Rachel, it was like that was a constant question. And she finally got to the point where her standard answer was, what, and ruin these 12 inches? So, which shut everybody down. At least there was that. Um, she does have a little bit of a stand-up comedian in her when she is dealing with that kind of annoyance. So, okay, so thank you so much for writing this book. I'm glad it's out there, and best of luck with doing all the stuff.
Thank you so
May it
much.
sell like crazy. So
Get them out there like hotcakes. Thank you.
great, and I'll put an URL in the YouTube link so
Great.
people can buy it directly. Thanks for the interview.